Teams. Let me take a second and share my screen. So if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Cool, awesome. Actually, give me 1 second. I might need to reshare.
And just one update. Meanwhile, if you have questions, feel free to write it in our chat and also on our YouTube live stream as well.
Cool. So today, before I start with the session, I'll be giving a brief introduction about my journey into product management. So as I mentioned, my name is Ankit. I'm currently working as a senior product manager at Amazon, focused on middle mile logistics at Amazon, essentially focused on trailer repositioning, that's making sure that our entire transportation network has the required resources at the right place at the right time to make sure we fulfill customer promises. But my professional career started off with starting at Uber after I finished engineering school and finished my degree in electronics and communication engineering. I was an intern with Uber, part of the operations team, basically a part of three people and a dog trying to launch cities in India. But I really was excited with the idea of bits and atoms coming together to solve something as magical as ride sharing, which was a completely new product or concept at that point in time. So I joined the team full time and focused on key verticals such as launching Uber Pool in India, was managing their P&L, was focused on risk operations, and launched cash payments, which is now one of our biggest modes of payment. But 2 years into my job, I had a chance to work with product teams and engineers from all over the world, and essentially realized I really wanted to be part of shaping product at Uber, and decided to make the move to San Francisco, where I started working on our driver products for our fleet and rental companies. And then in a year, transition into our Uber Eats team, where I was focused on the delivery experience. So anything that's related to tracking your order, rating, tipping, receipts, customer support, all of those products were sort of built by our team. And then moved into a more formal product management role on our risk and identity team, focused on building risk and identity platform products for Uber, which essentially focused on reducing Uber's exposure to financial, safety, and regulatory risks, as well as unlocking new products like financial products on our platform. And that's a little bit about my background. And as I mentioned earlier, now I just joined Amazon about a month ago. Cool. So, getting deeper into the agenda for today, I'll be covering a few things around what is product management, then focusing on motivating product teams, talking a little bit about breaking into product management in case you're interested in entering the career as a PM, and the final takeaways from today's session. And then finally, we'll have some Q&A at the end in case you all have any questions. So what do product managers do? This is like a very common question that a lot of PMs who are early on their journey, or as well as like not PM people who work with product managers, often ask, what does a product manager's day look like? So I have like a quick video before I talk about it. So let me play it for y'all.
What you do at Initech is you take the specifications from the customers and you bring them down to the software engineers.
Yes, that's right.
Well, then I just have to ask, why couldn't the customers just take them directly to the software people, huh?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because engineers are not good at dealing with customers.
So you physically take the specs from the customer?
Well, no, my secretary does that, or they're faxed.
So then you must physically bring them to the software people.
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, sometimes.
What would you say you do here?
Well, look, I already told you. I deal with the goddamn customers so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
what you do in Initech.
Sorry. So jokes aside, product manager's job in more detail is essentially operating at the intersection of design, engineering, and business, and identifying user problems and prioritizing solutions to address them and achieve business goals. So if you think about it, product managers are leaders who are closely focused on listening into user problems and work with cross-functional partners to find solutions to these top business challenges, and do so by making sure that they are user focused, outcome oriented, and and are and well versed in the skills of their team to actually deliver the final output. So it's a very interesting role that has sort of emerged in the industry over like almost 20 years ago, with Google starting its product management programs as like an experiment. So funny enough, there was no product management role before Google, started their APM program, and it was mostly engineers and designers trying to brainstorm together to figure out what they need to build. But as companies got bigger, as they started specializing into spaces, it became increasingly important to figure out how they can prioritize solutions better and work more closely with their business teams to actually make sure that we are solving the top problems in the best way possible to fulfill customer needs. So that's a little bit of our intro, but going deeper. So what are PMs really responsible for? Um, so these are some of the key things that PMs are often, held accountable and responsible for. Starting off with defining the product vision, that is defining the what and why for the team. And this is probably one of the most critical things that PMs do, because without the what and why, the team members would not have a clear view of how they can help achieve the team's goals, as well as it also helps them to relate whatever they're doing every day on an ongoing basis with not only the team's vision but with the overall company vision. So it's important to have a very crisp, clear, and articulate vision of the what and why for your product. Secondly, um, PMs are responsible for being the torchbearers for their users. So listening into the customer needs and problems. Um, Good PMs focus a lot, put a lot of their time in being aware, customer focused, and not necessarily competition obsessed. Because if you look at like businesses like Uber, 10 years ago, it was magical that you would just press a button and get a ride. And today, like it's one of the most basic things that we take for granted, right? It's because customers want more. They want something, they want their products to improve. And, as a PM, if you don't necessarily focus on improving the customer experience, over the course of time, users will switch away to a product that offers a better experience to them. Prioritization. At the end of the day, like, you know, if you work in any tech team, you come across like hundreds of ideas on what to build, what we can do. And it becomes really important to be able to cut through the noise and recognize what's really important for the user and what will really help us achieve the business goals given a certain set of resources and the set of priorities that the company has at any given point in time. And that's one of those points where PMs can play a critical role in making sure that we focus on the biggest challenges that we currently face rather than getting distracted by things that may not be as important. And finally, leading by influence and not by authority. So one of the interesting things about PMs is that they lead teams, but they have to lead them without any authority. It's not like you're the CEO of a company, which sometimes people describe it as, because you are essentially having to influence them through your strategy, through your research, your understanding, your vision, and that sort of adds a unique dimension to it as a role. Because if you're not able to lead them, it would be very difficult for you to be successful as a PM, because it would be very hard to retain good talent. It would be very difficult to be productive. And finally, like if your team doesn't believe in your vision, it sort of becomes very difficult to actually deliver good results in the end. Cool. So what does a week for a PM look like, right? So you normally would have an insane number of meetings, working with different stakeholders from design, engineering, business teams, legal, and it often can get very overwhelming for a lot of folks in this role, especially folks who are starting on new teams or are in their first product management role. So it's very important to be able to have a very good hold over how you are using your time and prioritizing it to make sure that you get the maximum bang out of your buck. So if you're someone who's just starting off into this role, just make sure that initially you may have a lot of meetings which might seem overwhelming, but over the course of time, you will be able to balance things out better. Another important thing to understand about this role, it's super cross-functional. So you have to be someone who is very good with working with people and making sure that you are very collaborative in general. And this is one question that a lot of people who end up thinking about PM as a career often ask: is this the right career for me, right? And my general view, and this is something that even I ask myself. So my general view is, you should become a product manager if you're someone who is someone who loves problem solving. Like every day, what really makes you happy is getting into the office or working, getting a whiteboard and jamming with people to solve a problem for both your user or your team. Someone who loves driving business goals, not just problem solving, but problem solving something that adds value to the business. You don't want to be someone who's just solving a problem that your users do not necessarily deem important. Thirdly, someone who is a great cross-functional collaborator who likes to work and interact with people. Given the nature of the role, you will always be in a position where you would need to collaborate with folks from different work streams. So that becomes an important aspect of uh, you should consider if you are approaching this as a role. You should be strategic in terms of thinking about the long term and not necessarily thinking about what I can do tomorrow, but just think about what I can do 6 months or 1 year from now. So having that strategic mindset becomes a critical component of your role. Fifth, getting things done. I think at the end of the day, it's a very outcome oriented role, and that's you're always under the radar of leadership to see what kind of output your team's producing. So there are definitely moments where you may not have a resource, like you may not have a researcher to help you with, like getting some user research, or an analyst to help you with analyzing some business metrics. So um, often you have to get your hands dirty and make sure that you take those things across the finish line by taking some of that workload on your shoulders and making sure things are progressing. Uh, Leading teams, and again, as I mentioned earlier, it's through influence and not authority, and it becomes critical to develop that trust as well as uh, you know confidence with your teams through your strategy, through your understanding of the space, through research, your vision, and it's a critical component of getting a good output of your team. Having strong communication skills, being able to communicate effectively across different audiences by judging, uh, how their understanding is of a topic, how to massage your communication in a way which is most effective in terms of them being able to understand it and is powerful enough to get the message across. Someone who has a bias for action, that is always aligned on making decisions. You should not be indecisive. At the end of the day, I always believe, like, I don't want to make more than 20% of the decisions for my team. The rest of the 80%, I let my team own them. But at the end of the day, those 20% of the time, you should not be indecisive, because your team relies on you making good decisions and good decisions regularly. And finally, be organized, detail oriented, and prepared, especially if you're working with engineers and designers. You want to make sure your product requirements, your rollout plans, your design philosophy, etc., are extremely crystal clear to the teams that you work with on an ongoing basis, to make sure that people can operate in the most effective way possible. On the other side, if you are someone who is fulfilled by things like appreciation or having your own way or being left alone, always being right, or trying to take on everything by yourself and not necessarily collaborate with people, everyone liking you or avoiding people, product management may not necessarily be the best role. It's often, you know, there are often times where you have to take on things that may not necessarily be part of your job, and you may not necessarily get appreciation for it. But at the end of the day, the role is such that you are a owner and not a renter. So making sure that you always are, not driven specifically by appreciation all the time is important. To You need to make sure that you are collaborative and open to other people's ideas. At the end of the day, fostering a culture of the best idea wins is really important. uh, you're somebody who is a people person in the sense that you are good with working with people becomes an important part of it as well, given the cross-functional nature of the job. And it's also important to you know leverage your teams and not necessarily take everything on your own plate, because that's part of a team. PM's role is to leverage their resources in a way that they can get the maximum output and impact. So that would always be done if you are able to put together a good team and leverage them in the best way possible. And finally, like, there will be moments where you make decisions that might be unpopular, but they will be in the best interest of the business. So there will be times where people may not like you for those kind of decisions. So that's another thing you may want to consider at those times. It could be like changing the direction of the roadmap. It could be making certain prioritization calls. So those are very common examples where you will definitely run into a lot of cases where your decision may be unpopular with folks. Uh, Moving on, so to the crux of what I want to cover today is how to motivate your product team. This is a very common question that a lot of people struggle with, because at the end of the day, a motivated team is one that is productive, is retained in a market where it is very hard to hire good tech talent. It's important that we focus on teams that are happy and are excited about the work they do, and can to relate their work to the overall company's mission. So I'll be talking about a few things that, in my view, can help on that front. Um, I think starting with first is like providing your teams with freedom and flexibility to approach problems so that we can inspire creativity and innovation. I think teams, especially engineers, often like or are keen on getting that independence and not having a lot of hand holding in terms of how they should be approaching a problem. And this essentially helps them learn and continue to grow in their careers, and also not only helps them grow but actually introduces creativity in the team, where we might start thinking different about problems which have been solved previously in a certain way but can be done in a better way in the future. And having that freedom of space to operate is something that teams really love and appreciate. So just inspiring creativity and innovation through freedom to approach problems would be a great way to start off and fostering a good culture in your team. Secondly, having a product vision that is strong and clear and provides the team with visibility on the what and why, which in turn would help them focus on a strategy to achieve the vision. Not having a clear product vision would often lead to cases where you would end up making decisions that aren't necessarily in line with what the long term goal for the product looks like, or would in many situations it would not be clear to the team members in terms of how the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis is helping the team achieve the long-term product vision. It's also important for your team's product vision to be clearly tied to the overall company's vision and how it would help achieve that. And that's something that makes the team feel a lot more clear in terms of why they're actually taking a certain strategy to achieve certain goals for the product. And that's something that is probably one of the most important things that you should think about as you take on a team, is having a very clear product vision for it. Thirdly, putting together a flexible growth path. I think you come across many people who want a different career growth path for themselves, right? It could be someone wants to be an engineer as an IC. Somebody would might want to become an engineering manager. Somebody might be a designer right now and might want to enter into product management, or somebody might want to enter business development. So everyone wants a opportunity to explore and figure out what really excites them in the long run. And good leaders always focus on helping team good talent on their team navigate the organizations for the right opportunity which will help them achieve their long-term career ambitions. As an example, like I was fortunate enough to have worked with business leaders as well as product leaders who helped me navigate the organization to make sure that I found roles where I could continuously get the growth I seeked, as well as help nurture me along that path by giving me projects that would actually help me develop those skills on the way, so that those opportunities became more accessible to me as I sort of as I sort of worked on those teams. So good leaders definitely encourage their teams to approach different career opportunities, and it's also important for good leaders to do so to retain talent for the company, because people who see that they don't have opportunities to grow are likely to eventually leave and look somewhere else for alternate opportunities. Healthy challenges. It's critical that you provide your teams with healthy challenges that allow them to continuously learn and grow. But there's a caveat to that as well. It's important to also make sure that these challenges are not unreasonable, and they are not people are not put in a situation where they are not set up to succeed. So healthy challenges always help people to grow. They push people and make them feel that they are continuously coming to the office every day and growing professionally and personally. So trying to put together a good balance of healthy challenges as well as quick wins is an important part as you think about your product roadmaps. So it's something that you should always encourage and push your team and work with the leaders on your team to make sure how you you share them with the team to make sure that they are set up for success when they approach these challenges. And another interesting point is being the cheerleader for your team. I think half your time often gets focused on making sure that you are the advocate for your team's work and impact, and ensure that your team members feel recognized for the work that they're doing on an ongoing basis. Um, it could be going on the company all hands and uh, presenting some of the projects that your team's been doing. It could be in the form of sending out launch emails with shout outs to the different team members who were participating in the project. It could be making sure that members on your team have good opportunities to present the hard work that they've been doing in different avenues. So just making sure that the team feels recognized and their work and their impact is shared across the organization goes a long way in making them feel proud of the work that they're doing and the impact that they've been having for the larger company mission. So do invest a lot of time in making sure you share that out with the larger organization and give them opportunities to feel recognized. And I think finally, one thing that often a lot of people miss, especially given the hectic nature of the role, is being empathetic. Good leaders often put themselves in the shoes of others when things are not going as per plan. And the thing is, like, there will be many situations where things are not going as expected. It could be a product got delayed. There was a product is not working as expected. Something was not done on time, and it's important to be empathetic in these situations and understand what really went wrong. Is there something that was impacting someone personally? Was it like a dependency that somebody had on someone else which caused the delay or the issue that was at hand? Is it something that is reversible? So just making sure they're empathetic is important. Making sure that uh, you know improve the team's overall satisfaction, morale, and productivity in the long run. And uh, just making sure you understand the other perspective also helps make sure they're happy with the team and would like to continue to work with you as a person in the long run. So this is a little bit about how to motivate product teams, but I do know a lot of people approach me with this question of like breaking into product management, and the fact is that there is no like um, fixed path in terms of going to a set particular college and saying, "Hey, I have a degree in product management." It's something which is a very new career which has just come up over the last 15-20 years, and it's sort of challenging for folks to break into product management. But I'll talk about a few strategies that I have seen people around me adopt, as well as some of the strategies that I have adopted myself as to break into product management. So number one, education. So a lot of people go into business school, and after business school they attempt to get into tech companies, which is a pretty common path, as well as getting into boot camps, as well, product boot camps to get into product management. For the first one, I would just say like your prior experience before entering into business school plays a key role in terms of the kind of roles that you might have access to. It's not a hard and fast rule, but if you're somebody who's worked in like a pharmaceutical industry before and now does an MBA, it sort of often becomes challenging to uh, you know switch into another sector that might be, let's say, focused on financial products. So that's something just to keep in mind. Boot camps are also a very popular way to actually enter into product management that have become really popular over the last 3 to 4 years. Um, this has is These are the most common ways of actually entering into product management. The second one is transferring internally within a tech company. This is something that I actually use to get into product management. That is, find someone who can help you develop and foster the skills that are needed for the role by getting projects that allow you to learn those skills, and to finding someone who would be the sponsor or champion for creating a role for you in the organization and help you make that transition from a non-PM to a PM role at the company. This is, in my view, the easiest way to do it. It takes about 1.5 to 2 years to actually, you know, do it in most companies, and most companies actually do have programs that allow you to get mentorship and the required support to actually enter into product management. I know Uber does it. I know that Amazon has a lot of programs like it as well. So that's something that you might want to evaluate as well. The third one is being a PM at a startup. It's often easier to break into startups as a product manager, given that they are obviously in need of good talent, and um, also they're not necessarily looking for people who have a lot of prior product management experience, given that most of the people at the company are still in early stages of their career as well. So product management at startups is also a good way to at least break into it and learn a lot about product management. The only downside of it is that you may not get as much mentorship as you would get at a bigger tech company. Uh, but that's something to keep in mind as well. The other popular avenue is APM programs, as well as internships at big tech companies. These are really hard to break into, given that there are very few roles that these companies open up every year, and there are a lot of applicants from different universities. So unless you're like top of your class or have like a really great project to back it up, it's often very competitive to get into these programs. But this again is one of the more popular ways to enter into product management at the beginning of your career if you're still in college or just completing your master's program. This is like one very common avenue for folks to enter into a product management career. And finally, you could also start your own company, like do your own startup. At the end of the day, there's nothing like it, but obviously there is a lot of hard work involved. But this could be one more strategy that you could potentially adopt to break into that career. So, final takeaways. Okay, start off. PMs are leaders and torchbearers for their users, products, and their teams, and lead cross-functional teams to achieve outcomes in line with business goals. So the key things to sort of take into account here is like PMs focus a lot on listening to their user needs and user problems, as well as their teams' needs and their problems, and are focused on delivering outcomes that are closely aligned with business goals. They are folks who are extremely cross-functional. That is, they are very good with working with their cross-functional partners from different teams, and are strongly focused on delivering goals that are in line with the overall business objectives. Second is PMs focus a lot on building trust. The PMs do not have the cross-functional teams directly reporting into them, and a lot of that trust and is established through building a very strong product vision, strategy, execution, and people skills while working with these partners to make sure that they're able to deliver the output that is needed to deliver results. And finally, PMs are team players. PMs consistently focus on keeping their teams motivated by providing team members with regular and ample growth opportunities, independence to operate, being empathetic, and focus on showcasing their impact. It's extremely critical given how competitive the tech market is that we focus on retaining quality talent, because if you're not focused on retaining good talent, they'll eventually leave, and it becomes relatively challenging to actually operate without good people, because it's good and smart people that actually help you build the product, and it's without them it would be pretty challenging to actually deliver high quality results. And that's pretty much it from my side. I'll probably open it up for questions that y'all might have.
Yes, thanks a lot for a great talk, Ankit. I guess we already have a couple of questions. Do you want to take a look in the chat? I think it starts from.
Sure, let me stop my sharing. Cool. Do you have an example of a good vision and a bad one? How did that influence the collaboration? Do you have an example? So I can talk about one case where we had a good product vision for sure. I wouldn't neverly, I wouldn't call someone that was another product vision is bad. I would call it not as good. But in terms of a good one was uh, something that our C uh, was one of the times when I was working on Uber Eats on the food delivery experience vertical. I was also focused on the customer support experience that we are providing our users. So one of the product visions that we put together is providing consumers with reliable, trustworthy, and efficient customer support to provide them with a magical experience. So we focused on providing them with something that when we look at like the kind of pain points that consumers have with customer support, they don't know if their problem is going to be solved. They don't know if it's going to be solved quickly enough, and they don't know if they need to do a lot of heavy lifting for it. When we spoke to our consumers, we essentially figured out that these are the three things that they really cared about whenever they would reach out to us or any other company for customer support. And if any of these three things would get violated, they would be very unhappy and potentially not even reuse the product. It would often be a make or break deal. And a good example is Amazon. When you reach out to Amazon, you get a great customer experience, and that's why a lot of people end up reusing the product, right? And this sort of helps us understand in terms of, okay, these are the three things people care about. It helps us understand what are the goals our team should have, right? In terms of what metrics should we be looking at. So it could be improving turnaround times by so and so. It could be providing a customer satisfaction rate of XYZ, or it could be improving retention by this number. And once we had those numbers or those metrics that we would track our success against from the vision itself, we could put together a more a more a strategy around how we will actually get there by specific products, right? The specific features, specific improvements that we would actually build into the product. It could be building support automation workflows where people don't even need to wait for the solution to be resolved. It could be an automated workflow, or it could be something where uh, we currently don't even have the ability to measure that particular metric, so we actually build technology to be able to capture that. It could be like something like a CSAT survey. So or it could be something that even says about we should revisit our policy on certain things, right? If it's not a good customer experience, we want to be in a situation where we provide trust versus experience in a way where we're able to find a sweet spot between them. So just having that vision helped us get the nitty gritties of what really needs to be done in order to achieve that, and how we're actually going to be tracking progress in terms of how successful we are as well on that path. Cool. Does that answer the question?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay. Second one, what would you say is the difference between a product manager and a product owner? So I believe like some companies have product owner roles. I'm not exactly sure how they are structured, but I did speak to one company that did have one of these roles at it's a fintech startup in the EU. But I believe product managers are more focused on the tech side to actually deliver results from a business and engineering perspective. And I believe product owners are slightly, it could, they could potentially be non-tech PMs as well. The generalize the categorization is more broad, where a lot of them might often be focusing on uh, products that it could be like, hey, I own marketing for, let's say, Amazon Echo, so it could be like a non-tech PM categorization as well. I'm not exactly sure about the difference, but this is something that I've observed in one or two roles that I've seen. But I would not say you should take my word for it on this one, because I haven't come across product owner roles very often. I also did come across a product owner few roles at a few companies where they often have the engineers reporting and rolling up into the product owner itself, and they did not have a separate SDM for it. But I'm not exactly clear about how product owners operate, since I've mostly been coming across product management roles in the Valley at least. So I don't think I did a good job answering that question. So apologies for that. Uh, did you learn everything on the job, or is there something you learned from outside? Example, coaching, further education, training, course, podcast, etc. Is there something you would recommend? I would say I learned a lot from working with really talented peers. It's really important to find um, companies where you can actually learn a lot from the peers and leaders that you work with. So there could be things that you you spend a lot of time observing others. What are things that they do well? What are things that they don't do well? And then potentially include that in the way you work. So I personally have learned a lot from observing the way people operate around me, and taking the observing the good and bad things that they do and trying to sort of incorporate it in my regular functioning. But I think everyone has a different strategy to learn. Some folks are would prefer learning on the job. Some people would love focus on learning through reading or through classes. A couple of things that I've seen people leverage a lot for learning more about product management is focusing on things like podcasts, focus on reading materials that are written by folks who have had a lot of experience in solving some of those problems. um, I would say those are like good examples of um, areas where you could definitely learn. I would also like focus a lot on having a this is something that my manager taught me a while back, is like having your own board of people who would potentially you can regularly connect with, maybe on a monthly or a bi-monthly basis, to understand how you're progressing in your career, how you're running into certain challenges, and what would they recommend how you could potentially solve some of these challenges. And these people would help you, keep you honest in terms of making any changes in terms of how you've been progressing, and how you could potentially change your trajectory with regards to a certain direction that you've been following, and do things a little better as well. Does that answer that question? All right, cool. uh, does Amazon have specific new grad roles for product managers? Yeah, we do have entry level product management roles for new grads. um, they're there across not only Amazon and different tech companies. Some tech companies have formal APM programs, which are essentially rotations where they put you on a 3 to 6 month rotation with a particular team, where you ship a particular product, and then essentially they uh, position you on another team, where it's a very good learning experience to work with different teams as you realize what's an area that you want to focus on in the long run, while also getting a lot of mentorship and coaching. Amazon has I'm not sure if Amazon has an APM program, but we do have entry level product management roles which are accessible to new graduates as well. Cool. um, So another question, can you explain which of the mentioned motivation aspects you found most important or impactful? Can you give an example of how it affected team you've led or you've been a part of? Second, what do you found the hardest as being a PM? In terms of, one of the motivation strategies that I have found the most useful for me is being empathetic. I think, um, being on any team, there is always moments when things are not going as per plan. And I can give you a good example where, you know, this is sort of paid off. Um, we were launching a product where uh, we we rolled out a new refund flow where we would charge back restaurants if they forgot an item in the delivery, right? And the product got delayed by a bit, and this was a product which was like over $150 million a year in terms of the return it was giving. So it was a project that was very closely being monitored by our C-suite leadership, and I was one of the people focused on it. And when that happened, there was a lot of like questions being asked in terms of why aren't we doing it, and why aren't we able to deliver this on time. And I could have been very like uh, uncourteous and probably blamed it on someone, but that would not have been productive. But I worked with our engineering team and tried to understand what went wrong, and we were able to circle down what were the exact issues. And we, instead of like putting blaming the fingers, we basically realized that we had not estimated the scope of the product correctly. There were a lot of dependencies that were not easily identified during the scoping cycle. And we, being constructive and putting together like what went wrong and how we can actually proceed further, uh, make sure that the team felt that they were not necessarily under undue pressure for something that was an honest mistake. And we were able to eventually ship the product in not in a very short amount of time. But just being empathetic to what actually went wrong and being very clear about what went wrong, rather than potentially saying, hey, that person did not deliver what they were supposed to in this period of time, would not have helped. So I think uh, that project was impactful, and the team was very proud of what they did. And finally we were actually able to do a lot of good things after that as well, just because the team felt very motivated to be part of that group, just because the work was impactful and the people they worked with were really good. What have I found hardest being the PM is the second question, right? I think for me the hardest part is just like being able to influence people without having authority over them. So I spend a lot of my time just making sure I really understand the products, I understand the pain points for the users, I understand the pain points for my team. And I focus a lot on being able to operate at different levels, be it at a high level or being hands on, and to understand things really closely, so that I can be I can establish that trust with the team, and they feel that whenever I'm having a conversation with them, I have a good idea about what they're working on, what are some of the challenges they're facing, so that I can be a good wingman for them to actually go through all these challenges, and sort of deliver good impact uh, with the team. And another question from Joseph. I've heard that the most important skills needed for a PM is to say no. That is, say no when genuinely the ask is not aligned with the product roadmap vision. How often do you have to say no? Um, so it comes back to the original point that I made. If you like, if you're someone who wants to be popular, product management is not the right path, right? There will be moments where you will have to make a lot of decisions that people don't necessarily agree with or people don't like. And it's okay to say no. I say no to a lot of people every day. I say no to directors and VPs at my companies, and it's not wrong. But what's important is when you do say no to someone, you need to back it up with a very good reason. And when you say no, have a very clear matrix on how you made that decision. Like, is it a prioritization call? Okay, these are the things that we look at while prioritizing things, and this is what our current roadmap looks like and how our priorities are currently stacked. And if we have to do what you're asking, we'll have to deprioritize one of these things. And here is the impact that we're getting from these projects, and we feel that the impact from these projects is more than that what you're suggesting, and I don't think it would be a good decision to actually reprioritize something. So this is a good example of something that you would run on a day-to-day basis, but it's perfectly fine and perfectly common for APM to say no, and you don't want to be someone who says yes and then gets held accountable for like, hey, you said yes, we'll do this, but we didn't end up doing this. So it's better to break in the bad news early than do it later. So uh, but just make sure to have a clear matrix in terms of how you made that decision, and also have consistent matrix. Don't use a different yardstick right now and have a different yardstick in the future. So try to be as consistent as possible while making those decisions, and not necessarily deviating from what you've said earlier. Okay, so what type of question from Zo? What type of product management projects are you working on middle mile, and who are your stakeholders? What is the product? It's a good question. So I just started on the team a month ago, so I can give you a quick background about what my team does. So in case you've ever ordered anything from Amazon, the person who hands over your product at the doorstep is someone who's handling the last mile of the delivery. So my team specifically focuses on the middle mile. That is everything that happens before the last leg of the delivery. That is taking packages from a seller's warehouse to our warehouses, that is our fulfillment centers, to our sort stations, to our delivery centers. So this entire uh, Amazon freight network is essentially supported by our team from a technology and operations perspective. And my team specifically within this large ecosystem of logistics looks at trailer repositioning. So whenever goods move from point A to point B, we leverage our trailers. That is this uh, long storage device that's attached to a tractor, which drivers or carriers move around. But what happens is, as we move loads and packages from point A to point B, certain locations become depleted of these trailers, and certain locations become sinks, that is, they have an excess of these trailers, and it's important to reposition these in order to meet future demands for packages and goods. And so our team essentially develops technology to make sure that there is always a balance in the network, or if there is an imbalance, we work on improving the fixing the imbalance issues through repositioning our trailers. And a lot of it is also upstream in terms of working with different teams, so that they actually, when they're planning their routes or they're planning their movement of these trailers, they do it in a way which does not necessarily hurt the uh, overall balance in the network in the longer run. So a good example of a product that we're working on. So when what used to have, so Amazon started buying its trucks about 3 years ago. Prior to this, they would primarily use services like UPS, etc. So once we started launching our own freight network, we essentially would use humans to reposition these trailers, that where they would basically call different sites and say, hey, can you move trailers, these number of trailers from this site to this site? And a lot of that would be super manual and would require a lot of human intervention. So our team recently launched a product that focused on automating all of this by getting a good sense of what inventory looks like at different spaces, what is the need there, and essentially automating these moves by sending these jobs to different sites and not having any humans call around, send requests, which becomes extremely cumbersome, especially as your network scales up. Imagine doing something like this on Prime Day through humans. It's or Black Friday. It becomes an impossible task, just because the sheer volume that you would get on such days is huge. Cool. Um, Moving on to the next question from Slavomir. Hi Ankit, thank you very much for great presentation. Amazon gained from COVID-19. What are your next plans for digitization? Are you trying to still diversify your business? Um, I'm not exactly clear on what digitization means in this context, but I can talk about like the second part, which is, are you trying to still diversify your business? I would say like Amazon as a company, one of the key things that Jeff Bezos always talks about in his shareholder letters is that we want to be the most customer centric company on earth. And if that means we need to continue to diversify the offerings or improve our products, we'll always be focused to do that, as long as it adds customer value in the long run, because we believe that if we add customer value in the long run, they'll continue to stick with us and provide more business to Amazon and more business to Amazon's partners. And a good example is, initially Amazon would only sell its own inventory on the platform, but eventually they diversified to sell the inventory of third-party sellers. And today, third-party sellers contribute to the bulk of Amazon sales, and it's consistently increasing over the course of time. So similarly, we adopt similar strategies in other areas where we focus, be it devices, be it streaming, be it gaming like Twitch. All those areas have similar investments where we want to continuously diversify, improve, because at the end of the day, what today's wow is tomorrow's basic. We want to make sure that we continue to improve and continue to diversify our offerings, that consumers feel that they're getting more value out of our products in the future, and not necessarily switching away because they're dissatisfied with our product offerings. How long do you think it is possible to keep the team motivated? There always comes a time when people are already saturated and need change. I think it's definitely possible to keep the team motivated for the long run. Um, I think it's a combination of two things, right? One is, are you able to make sure that there are exciting projects and right growth opportunities for people to continuously keep learning? It could be in the form of, hey, this is a new problem space that we want to enter. How can you design a system that can help unlock this? Or it could be in the form of, hey, here's added responsibility for designing the larger architecture for the system. Or it could be something, even leadership opportunities where you potentially get to manage a larger organization or a larger scope. So there's definitely an opportunity to stay motivated on a particular team for the long run, if you as long as you're continuously focused on putting together a strong product vision and a strong product roadmap, which continuously gives people the opportunity to continue growing their career. There will often be times that uh, people will want bigger opportunities that are a better fit for them. And in that situation, it's very important to be transparent with their team and make sure that you create the right opportunities for them in the larger organization, uh, either on other teams or somewhere else, and make sure that we continue to retain that talent, but maybe somewhere else. So it's important to have that outlook on making sure that you move your best people around to give them the best opportunities in the organization. You have a question from Uma. Hi, Ankit. As an interface between the customer needs and the capability of the team to deliver, how does one find a balance between setting quick wins and long-term vision? Uh, I think like it's important to have a good balance. I know like that's the question that you had as well. Um, I would say like the way you would think about it is, um, if you consistently think about quick wins, you will max out at a local maxima and not think about the global maxima, right? You need to be able to think long term and um, have a good balance of, like, let's say, I usually think about putting 60% of my time of my team's roadmap onto big projects or big rocks that are big opportunities in the longer run. And the idea is not to do them like put 100% get 100% of the big rock done, but the idea is to put together like an 80-20% principle, like where you do 20% of the work and you achieve 80% of the objective to validate those thoughts. So I would say put 60 to 70% of your roadmap on big big rocks, but don't necessarily have to achieve have to pull off the all the different features that would be needed to build that product, but try to validate that through an MVP, and see if you're able to get 80% of the value from 20% of the effort. The second bit I would say is, like, always have a balance for projects that are focused on things like tech excellence, and making sure keep focus on keeping the lights on, as well as focusing on small wins that could have add a lot of value to our processes and products that we currently already have. But I would say put 60-65% of your roadmap on your big rocks, or big bets that you might have as a team. Next questions from Pawan. Is formal degree like an MBA actually required to transition into a PM role? I'm not I did not go to business school. Most of the PMs I know did not go to business school, so I would say no. going into business school is not a requirement to get into a PM program. However, the only caveat being that product management does not have like a straightforward path to break into. So a lot of people end up using product business school as a avenue to approach product management as a career. So that's the one thing I would say is like it's just one of the ways to get into product management, but not the only way to actually break into that career for you. Uh, Next questions from Eric. When talking about motivating teams, what are your expectations from the software engineer manager role who are there to support their product teams, including you? I think like for me, like I try to maintain a balance with regards to working with our engineering partners. So while I am focused more on like writing our product requirements, defining our roadmaps, I lean on our engineering teams and our engineering manager to make decisions like what kind of architecture we'll use, how will we approach the problem from a tech perspective, how do we handle tech debt in the longer run. I think those are key questions that I give them um, freedom to sort of make decisions and operate on. But what I'm specifically mostly concerned about the use cases we'll be able to achieve, and uh, how sustainable is a particular approach for us given sort of the business requirements that we have. uh, I do give them a lot of independence in terms of how they would like to operate the technical design of the things they build. Secondly, I lean on our software engineering manager, and I closely partner with them actually on things like sprint planning, scoping out a product, making sure we are able to uh, divide a project into the right milestones. Those are cases where I'm much more in sync with my software engineering manager, just to make sure that we are doing things in the best possible way so as to deliver the results given what in terms of what we promised to the larger organization. um, Apart from that, I do work very closely with our SDM to make sure that we have the right projects, to make sure that our engineers have the right career growth opportunities, be it in terms of uh, a sort of architecture redesign that we might want to be focusing on from a tech debt perspective, but also giving someone the opportunity to actually do it and help them learn a lot from that particular activity. So that would be another thing that I would focus on. And finally, like just making sure our SDEs have ample opportunities to share some of the impactful work that they've been doing on an ongoing basis is again a key aspect of uh, you know making sure that they have good opportunities to continue focusing on their growth. Um, the other thing is that obviously like just making sure the team has a very collaborative culture. They're continuously unblocked on different projects. They have a clear view of what the priorities look like, making sure that we have a very clear framework and consistent framework for prioritization, and just providing them the transparency also goes a long way in making sure that the team feels satisfied when doing these collaborations. Okay, we have almost on time, so we have 1 minute. I think we have all the questions covered in time, so it's kind of perfect. But in case y'all have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me over LinkedIn or email me. My email address is on my LinkedIn profile, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
That's great, Ankit, and I really like the Q&A section as well. And thank you for the great talk, and thank you for the great questions. As Ankit said, I think we are pretty end of the session, so I'm going to stop our live stream. And yeah, if you have any feedback to us, just reach out to us. And if you also want to talk, or if you want to have suggest some speakers, or if you want to give some feedback to us, just reach out to us. And I'm looking forward to see all of you at our next event. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye. Have a good day.